What's up, everyone? It's Russo. I hope everyone is doing well. Please follow my Instagram at Russo Lifts, just in case something happens to this YouTube channel. You can follow, message, and you can watch my daily story content on Instagram. I'll see you there. What's up, everyone? It's Russo. I hope everyone is doing well with the ASMR sip. Today we're going to be going into, I'm just going down the list. I'm going to knock out every single compound, so I really hope you guys run up the like and subscribe. I'm really trying to wake this channel up. I appreciate everyone dropping algo comments down below. Today I'm going to be going into the dark horse, so I will have Dante throw up the video I just made on the future of muscle building as far as biohacking and PEDs are concerned, and that's where I go into the myostatin building pathway. So myostatin is essentially the ultimate genetic limiting factor. I explained it in detail in that video. So today I'm going to be touching on, supposedly a myostatin inhibiting steroidal structured SARM, aka YK-11, aka the dark horse, as far as the controversy around it. And there's a lot of hype around it. I have tons of experience with it, both oral and injectable. And we'll mostly be touching on, my experience with it, because I'll touch on the history and data. There's not much history and data to go off of, right? This is a very sketchy compound. It has been blown up in the biohacking community without any real concrete data. So to keep that into consideration, I never recommend YK-11, and when I documented it, especially when I did the injectable YK-11, which I'll have Dante put a vlog above where I literally just document injectable YK-11 and what happens to me and all the side effects I have, right? It was very sketchy. I was very nervous. That was one of the more risky PEDs that I documented in my career. So keep that into consideration before I go into the details. The YK-11 is a steroidal structured SARM, so it has a steroid-based backbone that the SARM is built upon, so this separates it from something like LGD, which is non-steroidal in nature and more looks like a ligand, where YK-11 is a traditional steroid structure-wise when you look at them side by side. So keep that in mind. The next thing you need to know is that YK-11 is a partial agonist to the androgen receptor, so you have to keep that into consideration when you are adding it into cycles, that it's a partial binder to the AR, meaning something like RAD that fully binds to the AR, something like Trembolin that fully binds to the AR is 100% going to kick the YK-11 off no matter what. So with that being said, all the controversy around YK-11. So the Gorilla Chemist, he's a biochemist that I follow on Instagram. He was the brains behind, the Blackstone Labs when it was hot and hit the scene. He's went out and said that YK-11 definitely doesn't drop myostatin because, there needs to be a transporter. I'm going to go right out on a limb. I would love to hear him detailed explain that, because I am not a biochemist, right? I'm just a crazy biohacker that documents his experience, but I will say that I do think it works. So when we look at the one data, it was a cell incubation study, right? So they were just looking at cells. What they saw was that YK-11 did bind with the AR, and YK-11 increased follistatin in the cells, which follistatin antagonizes myostatin. So that's the pendulum. The more follistatin, the lower the myostatin, right? These are the two balancing factors. YK-11 is increasing follistatin, thus a drop in myostatin. Myostatin is the ultimate genetic limiting factor. And for an example, I'll have Dante put a Belgian blue on the screen, which is a genetically modified cow to have 0 myostatin. So as you can see, I've touched on this in multiple videos. You can see that, this myostatin pathway is very, very, hot and critical when it comes to the future of biohacking, because of the extreme results that are perceived when you start fucking around with myostatin. So let's just go into experiences with it. Both experiences that I've, been sent to me on Instagram. There's the plug at Russo Lifts, always trying to diversify my YouTube following onto my Instagram as I never know what I am and am not allowed to post on here. But basically, I'm going to go into what people have told me about their experiences with YK-11 and my thoughts, the theories on utilization of YK-11, and just overall how my experience went. So people message me a lot about YK-11. I feel like it's like the most hyped dark horse PD out there that's new, completely unresearched, super sketchy. That's going to make people interested. Right off the bat, it causes a ton of hair loss, so it's not a safe hair compound whatsoever. So if you think you're not going to get shedding on it, you're going to get shedding on it. It 100% causes hair loss. I've had shedding on it personally, and my hairline is pretty resilient. The second thing that you want to know is that even though, like an actual well-established, has a degree, went to school for this, biochemist like the Gorilla Chemist says that it's not impacting myostatin. Again, I don't know the specifics. I'm not going to pretend to. But basically, what I felt like when I took it is it was impacting myostatin, right? Because my joints started to feel like absolute shit. So people don't understand, which I touched on in the last video, that the lower your myostatin, the more your tendon and joint recovery is impeded, right? That's kind of the caveat with lowering your myostatin. It's not a free ride as far as side effects on the cascading downstream effects of lowering your myostatin. Basically, when I did my injectable YK-11 only cycle, as the cycle continued, I was actually lifting lighter and lighter and lighter because I was more terrified that I was going to tear a tendon. I was more terrified I was going to tear a bicep or fuck up my joints as the cycle went on. So I actually got weaker even though I felt stronger. So I got tons of reports of people fucking up their tendons because they'll continue going hard. I got tons of reports of people having joint issues on it, just like me. When I was squatting on YK-11, it felt like my whole spine was crunched versus off it. So definitely not for powerlifting whatsoever. And if you're adding it in for powerlifting, you could be, putting yourself in a danger zone, especially if you are, about to peak, using your super heavy weights, right? It's gonna mess with your joints for sure. And that's a side effect that the myostatin is actually being impacted, in my opinion. So basically, I lifted lighter as the cycle went on, and I looked crazier. So I was getting stronger. When I would actually lift stuff, I was terrified to tear something, so I lifted lighter as the cycle went on, and I just had this like crazy fullness all day. It was a dense, dryish look. There was maybe a little bit of water associated with it, but it was definitely a dry compound and definitely a freaky compound. I was freaky full on it. I think I'll have Dante throw up the one shot in my old house where I'm like reviewing a pre-workout. I looked like a freak show at 230 pounds on it, and it was no joke whatsoever. So basically, the theories around dosing it, right? So there are certain theories. Coach Trevor has the theory of you should just dose it at night because that's when you're going to be growing. That's when you want your myostatin to be lower to allow that genetic limiting factor to, kind of cessate while you're in the growth phase during your sleep. I personally don't like utilizing it at night because it increases my resting heart rate when I go to sleep. And I just feel like my heart's strained as it's, doing its thing when I'm going to sleep. Personally, have tried that method. With a 6-hour half-life, you have to keep into consideration that you could keep it constant the whole day. Personally, what I ended up with was doing pre-workout style androgen spikes, so it would spike during the workout and then continue into post-workout recovery. I did try to keep it constant all the time. I was crazy full all the time. I almost looked flat if I didn't eat to keep up with it. And, my joints just felt odd and weird the entire time when I was keeping it constant. When I went into injectable, that's where it got insane. So oral dosing, you'll read online anywhere from 5 to 30 milligrams a day. And I've played around with that, finding that the sweet spot for most people, in my opinion, will be 15 to 20, my 2 cents. And then with injectable, I got crazy with it. So the injectable was an extended half-life theoretically. I don't know if that's true or not, but basically did anywhere from 10 to 40 every day. Obviously ramped it up. 40 had my joints feeling absolutely terrible. Had my pumps absolutely insane and had me looking absolutely crazy, and also had me looking flat because I could not eat to keep up with it. So yeah, it's just like, it's one of those compounds that you also have to take into consideration. That's a partial agonist, right? So you can't just, like, if you're on a massive blast, you can't just like stack it in there. Like, it's going to only, everything else is going to bind with the AR. YK-11 is going to be last. So the final theory with it is, like, obviously as a steroid blast, like, this is why people blast in cruiser cycle, right? Because as you go into a blast, your myostatin is creeping up. Like, your body's like, what's going on? Like, we're gaining so much muscle so fast. Why are we doing this? Like, we must raise myostatin to stop this from happening. Otherwise, your body thinks it could die, right? You're always fighting the body with biohacking, and biohacking is all about tricking the body as you're going along. So when you blast steroids, right, your myostatin is creeping up the entire time to halt the steroid blast. This is why most people, you can't continue a blast into infinity. Eventually that blast will stop yielding any gains whatsoever, and it would be better to go back into a cruise, resensitize your androgen receptors, as well as wait for your myostatin to come back down. Well, the theory with any type of myostatin inhibitor, YK-11 is probably the most popular one out there right now, is that you would add it in like the final 4 weeks, right? So as your myostatin's creeping up, boom, you're adding in YK-11, which might creep it down. With your blast, you could prolong the gains of your blast. The theory behind it is you would get more out of your blast by adding YK-11 in at the end when the myostatin is going to be halting your gains. So there's that theory. Overall, would I ever recommend it? No. Virtually no data. You have no idea like what lowering myostatin is doing as far as overall organ growth, overall health growth. You don't have any idea. The last thing I want to touch on is, like, when you do a cycle of YK-11, it's seen that your myostatin actually takes anywhere from, half a month to possibly 2 months for your myostatin to return to baseline based on how much YK-11 you're messing around with, meaning that you could theoretically create new permanent gains. You theoretically could create a new set physique, meaning like your new physique that you can maintain on your cruise, like your new set muscle might change because the YK-11 is still impacting you long after you mess around with it. But overall, there are a ton of questions in the air, and when we look at the data, there ain't much to go off of other than people's personal experiences. But I will definitely say that it's rough on the joints. It is not fun on the tendons, and you really do have to be careful. But like I said, I think myostatin is going to be the next big thing in a decade and a half, and we will see people not even have to go to the gym. They might create like the new YK-11, like 10 generations down the road, that doesn't have very much of any side effects and will allow people to just fucking sit at home and have muscle, because that's pretty much what YK-11 does in a perfect world. So hope everyone is doing well. I will see you guys in my next video.